So what I'd like to show you now is a pretty extreme example of how we can use this stretch and onset facility to tidy up a recording. So just press B for browser. I've just got myself this piece of audio called 90 beats per minute loop 4. Now I know that this was recorded at approximately 90 beats per minute. So what I'm going to do is just double click, type 90, press enter. It doesn't necessarily have to be absolutely bang on, but just so we're in the right sort of ballpark, so we can hear what this audio was sounding like when it was recorded originally. Obviously, if we turn that to raw, we'll hear the audio as it was recorded. If I just set that to stretch HD, let's just have a listen. Well, let's just set that a little bit faster. So we're in the right sort of ballpark anyway. Just turn the metronome on, however, and just listen to it one last time. You can hear that. This is the complete opposite of what we've just been dealing with. It's not well cut. There's silence at the beginning, silence at the end. The drummer's all over the place, but I'm going to use onsets and stretch to tidy this up. And we're actually going to introduce a couple of other ideas as well. So what we can do is just boost the overall gain a little bit if we want, just to make it a little bit louder. First thing I need to do with the metronome off is just work out where the downbeat, where the first beat of the bar is. So I'm just going to count that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and what we're listening out for is this transient, this kick drum, rather than this. This is like a little fill, I suppose, just before the downbeat. Just start that playing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's the beginning of bar 2. So you can see the bar numbers are all over the place as well at the moment. So how do we go about turning this into something that is useful? Well, at the start and end of the audio event, we've got these handles, and these allow us to squash either side together a little bit. What I'm going to do actually is just get hold of the entire event and drag it so that that kick drum that we'd like to pin to the downbeat, bar 1, I'm just going to drag the event so that that is as close to bar 1 as possible. So I'm just going to zoom in. And that's near enough. I can tidy that up with a stretch marker in a moment. Before I do that, let's go onsets and just make sure that all the onsets are in the correct place. So remember, I'm just going to turn the onsets on. I'm going to just click this speaker icon so I just hear the very start of the onset so we can see if the onsets are positioned correctly. That one isn't needed, so I can just delete that. That one isn't needed, so we can delete that. That one isn't needed. Every time I hit spacebar, it starts from the top again, but it's not the end of the world. I know that it's not needed because it's one drum hit that's sort of been split into two slices, this slice and this slice, needlessly. I just want that to be one slice on its own, hence that's why I know to get rid of that. And there's one missing just here, so let's just double click to place. And there we go. Cool, so that's the onsets correctly positioned. Just need to double check that they're, you know, in the right place, but for the purpose of this example, that's good enough for me. So what I'm going to do now is go to stretch. I'm going to pin the first kick drum using a stretch marker. I'm going to pin it to the downbeat so it will stick. So you get continuous movement between the grid lines and it will stick to the downbeat. At this stage I can turn the metronome on. So you can hear the metronome is a fair bit faster than the audio sample. So there's a couple of ways that we can tackle this. The first is to quite crudely get hold of this handle, this marker, and just squash the whole bit of audio together initially. Still not quite enough. And we're getting there just by squashing it all together. And that's a little bit too much now. But what we can also do, as well as getting the overall timing roughly correct, is we can go in, zoom in, and we can use stretch markers to pin the correct drum beat to the correct point in the bar. So if I just turn the metronome off and we'll count out one bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. So that drum hit there, that should fall bang on the beginning of bar 2. And you can see it falls ever so slightly ahead of the first beat of bar 2. So I can just create myself a stretch marker, just drag that back a little bit. Notice that the audio between the two adjacent markers, if we just undo that and redo that, the audio between the two adjacent markers is stretched. Everything to the left of this one and to the right of any other adjacent markers is kept in the same place. Let's just put the metronome back on. Let's count out the next bar. So there's the kick drum that should be falling on the downbeat of bar 3. You can see it's ever so slightly ahead. So we double click to create a stretch marker, drag it back a bit. And that will be correct now. Again, the drummer's getting ahead of himself a bit, so we create a marker here, pull that back. And eventually, when you've done enough of them, you can start to see where the transients should fall. And if you've done it correctly, notice that all the onset markers seem to fall on nice quantized divisions of a bar. They seem to fall nice and evenly between the beats. So as well as it sounding right, it should look right as well. I'll just turn that off now. And the last thing I'm going to do is just close up the loop. So we've got a nice even 4-bar loop that we can use. Alongside anything else that we've got in. In our project. And when you consider how out of time that was, that's pretty amazing. Silence at the beginning, silence at the end. And we can go in and we can tweak that to our heart's content. So there's a snare drum there that's ever so slightly late. Now what we can do is what we can do is just double click either side of that, and we can just move that snare drum around, safe in the knowledge that everything to the right of this marker and the left of this marker is kept untouched in terms of timing. It's only the snare drum that we're going to be moving around. But we can take that one step further. I mean, it's an artistic decision whether or not you leave a little bit of human error in there, so there is a bit of a timing drift in there, or whether you completely iron out any discrepancies in the timing. So you could go through and you could place a stretch marker for each drum hit, like so. Or what you could do is pick this option here, which is split at onset. And this is where the correct positioning of the onsets, in this case marking out the beginning of each drum transient, this is where this is really important to get right. So I'm going to click split at onsets, and what happens is each slice, or rather each the area between two onsets is split into its own audio event. So that one event now becomes a huge number of events. So everything that happens before this bar one that I've created, the downbeat, I can just click and backspace, click and backspace, and then everything after, I can do that as well. Just drag a box to select multiple events and press backspace. So what's the benefit of doing that? Well, what we can do now is very quickly quantize each of those slices. So rather than you having to go in and mess around with stretch markers, we just press this option here. And in this case, I'm going to select custom 16th. I'm going to leave the end amount alone. I'm going to leave the start amount at 100. The reason I've selected custom rather than editor is the editor, the current grid size is 1/4. And that's quite a big fraction. So if I just, in fact, apply that, you can hear everything's been snapped to the nearest beat, and that's not what I was wanting. So in this case, I've gone custom 16th. Let's just click apply. You see how all those events got moved around a little bit. They're all now snapped to the nearest 16th of a bar, and the timing is therefore going to be a lot tighter. So we're correctly positioning onsets. We're then getting the overall timing of the loop correct with stretch markers. And then we can either go in and adjust to a very fine level using stretch markers the timing within the clip, within the event rather, or we can split the event up according to the onsets that we've correctly placed and then quantize the resulting audio events. Now that's where this fade in and fade out comes in as well. Now, it's not so bad in this example, but what fade in and fade out does is it adds a very small, well, as the name suggests, a very small volume fade in and out, just to avoid any clicks occurring. So if you've chopped a waveform off, let me see if I can just split that up for you so we can have a look. If we split a waveform off at positive or negative amplitude, you can tend to get a bit of a click. And if you just put a tiny fade out or a fade in, then chances are you can omit that click and just make it sound a little bit less unnatural. But in this case, let's just select all these. Doesn't really sound like we need a fade in. I'm just going to put a fade out on to make sure. And you can hear we can now feasibly use that loop that we've created in one of our projects. So although that's quite an extreme example that you're probably not going to come across while you're using Bitwig, just wanted to show you what it was possible to do with the onsets and the stretch markers to really go in and adjust the timing of loops that you'd like to sort of make your own, or if you've recorded something in, like yourself playing the guitar or singing, you need to tidy up the timing of that. You can be done using onsets and stretch markers.